Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Aurélien. I'm one of the two people behind Humble Reads, the studio who did Kamaeru, A Frog Refuge. So this is going to be, let's say, a rather business-oriented talk, I think. And so no fancy videos and images and whatever, but still, I think it's important also to know about the game that actually was launched on the market and how it went and so on. So, who is Humble Reads? We co-founded the studio with Melanie, a fantastic artist and game designer, has a lot of experience in the industry, and who left her studio to do this, go on this adventure with me. I'm doing the codes on the game design also, and I'm a former lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 20 years, so it's a bit strange. But anyway, give it up to make games, which is much more fun than law. What is Kamaeru? Kamaeru is a game about collecting frog and farming in wetlands. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the game itself. It's a cozy game, so it means no tension, no pressure, and the message, the things we want to convey to players, the feeling we want to convey is really the feel-good vibe. And so it's a very relaxing and cozy game. It was launched in June, so this has been 4 months now, on PC, on Switch, and on Xbox. This is, yeah, well, maybe I'm not going to use this to explain the game. It's complex. It's just Raphael yesterday said they don't use game design documents. We normally don't, but we actually did this for publishers, getting subsidies and so on. Kind of explains a little bit the game loop. The game loop is pretty simple. You put furniture in a frog refuge. Frogs pop in the frog refuge. You take pictures of them. You feed them insects. You tame them. You put them into your Frogodex, and you're happy looking at them, giving them names. And in order to do that, you have to restore wetlands. And by restoring the wetlands, you can collect insects to feed the frogs. You can make money by making wetland products. And with that money, you can buy the furniture. What the game design document kind of shows is that when you kind of mix genres in a game, which for us was collection game and farming game, you really have to make sure you interconnect all the genres. Otherwise, you disappoint people and the game is not fun to play. Did we actually follow our game design document? I would say like 80% maybe. So it was a rather good exercise. But well, it is what it is. As like every game dev, I think we went away from the game design document quite a lot and quite often by iterating and prototyping. And so, well, it's just a simple diagram. There's an underlying message behind Kamaeru, which is that wetlands, and not a lot of people actually know that, are a fantastic tool against climate change because they store CO2. And they're very, very powerful at doing that, much more than actually making, rebuilding forests and protecting trees, which doesn't mean we should destroy forests and not protect trees, of course. But people don't really know that, and we thought by making a fun game about frogs, we could actually convey this message to a general public. That was really one of our big aims with this game. And we were very happy actually to really get thousands of players restoring wetlands just as an idea and maybe getting the feeling that it's important to do that. Also, of course, for biodiversity. So maybe enough about the... Thank you for the wetlands. Enough about the game itself. Let's go into maybe the business aspect of this thing. Yesterday, someone talked about the huge gaming market, making billions and billions of dollars, and everybody has stars in its eyes and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to be one of these people." And we all know about the survivorship bias, where you think that just one example of this little game dev who made millions just means we can all do it. The reality, unfortunately, is a bit tougher. This is a super tough market, highly competitive. Look at the amount of games coming out every week, every day, every month, every year, and it's more and more. So getting a chunk out of that is really, really complicated. And even worse, the top 10 PC games, for example, if you look at them, most games are games that have been out there for years. Actually, the majority of the time spent on games is spent on Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft, etc. Games that have been there for years. So finding your spot at the sun, in the sun there is really tough and hard. But we love making game dev, so we need to find a pragmatic way to keep doing it, which means not only financing the current game, but also preparing for next games if you want to survive as a game studio and not just as a hobbyist. Did we become millionaires? Unfortunately, the answer is no, or maybe fortunately, who knows, because now we still have a goal to make the next game and make it work. Was it a success? We are very happy with what we did with the game. We made the game we wanted, which is really cool. We had this also, we wanted to do this environmental message that was really important for us, so we were really happy to be able to actually do what we had in our vision. We actually made money. I'm mentioning here the 200,000K threshold. We made more than that, but what's interesting here is, again, if you look at the diagram here, actually only something like 9% of games make that threshold, which means that really the vast majority is not making enough money to actually make the studio live and prepare next games. And that is really, so you can really be happy if you can actually finance your production. We covered production costs for 2 years, counting in the publisher money and subsidies we got, and I'll go into detail about this a bit later. We got funds to prototype the next game, and that is also super important. It's not enough just to finance your production. You have to be able to iterate and go on for years like that, so it's important to think about that. We learned tons for the next game, of course, and this is like really a mountain you're climbing, and every time you make a game, you learn so much for the next one. And there will be a long tail. Long tail is something you don't always think about. You think about launching a game, and then you're happy about launching a game. But the reality is that then it goes on and on and on and on. And with each Steam event, for example, you gather new wish lists, and you convert into sales some of the wish lists, and you have to plan this in advance also. Getting time ready to prepare to make events and working on that long tail so that this becomes like a source of revenue for the future too. So right now we have something like 100,000 wish lists on Steam and Switch combined. What does that mean? Who knows? You have to know that the average conversion rate is something like on Steam, I think it's around 10 to 15%. So actually that doesn't mean you're gonna make sales like that. It's very cheap to wish lists. So people just click on the button. Converting that into actually sales, that's another story. But it's still nice, of course. So what was our recipe, I think, for getting there was really pragmatism at all levels, really from A to Z, and that's what I'm going to go into a little bit in more detail. Pragmatism is whenever you do something, ask yourself the question, why do you do it? Do you really need to do it? Where's the effort? Do I need to spend 1 month on this light that nobody's going to see? And of course, what I'm saying doesn't sound like being passionate and whatever about games, but still it is, because we want to be passionate for a long time. So we want to make the game succeed, and so we have to be a bit realistic about what we're doing. And that's also how we get to make a game in 2 years and not in 4 or 5 years. Starting with the audience, we had chosen the post-COVID vibe of cozy games. You can see the trend on Google with cozy games, how it went up. A lot of players played Animal Crossing during COVID, and it probably helped really getting a lot of people into this genre. It was very appealing to us as devs, of course, because making people feel good about playing a game, this is something we really strived to do. It does have game design advantages, again, in this kind of pragmatic point of view. It doesn't mean it's easy to make a cozy game, not at all. But it's probably easier than making this whole logic of game balancing behind very sophisticated management games, or combat management in very sophisticated combat games. With a cozy game, you can take things for granted that may be a little bit more easy to do. It also has niche advantages. You have a lot of events, specific events in this genre. That means you will have marketing beats where you can actually try to promote the game. There are communities, again, for marketing purposes, this is super important. There are people out there with communities for cozy games on Twitter, on Reddit, and wherever. So all of these kind of led us also to choose this type of a game. The team, scoping the team is also something we really tried to think about. We kept it small. Melanie and I both managed large teams in the past, and we know that it's not easy always. Sometimes it's just necessary to have people to work on the game, but the smaller you keep it, the less you have problems, to be very pragmatic about it. So we estimate that we did like 80% of the work in terms of time spent, and we outsourced what we could not do, like music, animation, QA, localization, obviously. But you can see on the cost split that 60% of the cost was just us working. Also meaning that when you subcontract, it can become more expensive than when you actually do it internally. But we did a lot of external consulting, for example, because we thought that getting know-how from third parties was really super important for UX, UI stuff, for example, or narrative design. So that's where we, again, is always the question, why do you do it? Do you really need to do it? And sometimes you just need to invest and say, okay, we need this know-how because it's important for our core audience. So typically, UI and UX for a cozy game is super important, that people feel in a very smooth way about playing the game. So we did some consulting there, and a lot of external testing. Also scoping the game, again, same idea of being very pragmatic about it. The choice of 2D for us was super important. First, because Melanie is a great 2D artist, but also because it was a strength for a production pipeline. We liked the watercolor style that we could use, and we thought it would appeal to a cozy audience. And also, to give you an example, there are lots of examples, but we had a lot of thoughts about whether we should have a character that is moving, the player is moving a character or not. It was a really headache for us, because not doing it, typically from a pragmatic point of view, was avoiding the camera controls and all of these issues. And we could just actually really move furniture around, click on things, that was enough. But for months, we were really stressed about would players actually like that. And when we play tested, actually it turned out that nobody really cared. If the game was really, if the UX and UI was good, nobody cared about moving a character around. This is not a combat game, who cares? So it worked out, and for us it was much less work, much less time, much less money invested into these issues. Financing the game, big issue, big question. Our take there again was to try to think about maximizing the sources of revenue. Because again, sales is something you cannot take for granted. So we thought, let's try to get what we can from wherever we can. In France, we are a French studio. In France, fortunately, we have a very good system of subsidies. I think it exists in Germany, in Belgium, in the UK, and other countries. But in France, we're lucky to have it. So we got some money from the CNC, which is also financing movies in France. We were very happy to get a subsidy by the Xbox Indie Accelerator program, and we found a publisher. And so all of this actually guaranteed that we would cover our production costs, which was much less stressful also for us to go into the project and work on it. Publisher, we also get the question very often about what do we expect from a publisher? Should we go there? Why do we do? Again, for us, it was really a pragmatic question of do we use our savings or do we rather get money from a publisher? And we went there, to be very honest, we went there for the money, clearly, and especially for guaranteed money, which is we wanted to de-risk the production. So a publisher is somebody who gives you money, is like a bank, but you don't have to reimburse him if the game doesn't work. But it costs a lot of money. It's very expensive. So it's an expensive loan, but you're effectively de-risking the fact that you're not going to sell enough units. And so you're guaranteeing a certain revenue. If that's what you're after, then the publisher, provided you negotiate your contract in the right way, of course, is a good way to go. But maybe that's not your strategy. It's really a question of choice. We were surprised also to get a lot of QA from our publisher, which was really cool. We didn't really expect that, and it was very useful to have QA ongoing during the whole production process. And well, of course, there's marketing and release management being having to handle all the terrible backends of all the console manufacturers. Thanks, 10 minutes. And so, yeah, this we got from our publisher too, but again, this is not really what we were after. We were very hands-on ourselves in the marketing and the release management because we thought this is so key. Being able to know how the marketing goes and how the management of your release goes is so key to sales and to your studio that we thought we should be very involved in that. And our publisher was very nice to also let us be involved there, so that was really cool. Whoops. Because this is GodotCon, let's talk a little bit about Godot. You noticed I pronounce it the French way, Godot. We used Godot 3.5 because when we started 2 years ago, that was the thing to do. We ported it for Godot 4 for safety reasons recently, but maybe it's just overstressing about, because Godot 3.5 worked very well and there's no reason to change that. 100% GDScript. Strictly no problem with GDScript. Everything was just perfect. Even on a Switch, which is a hardware that is, you have to optimize quite a lot. It worked just perfectly. One strategy what we had was to have really one version to rule everything with booleans, true, false, whether this is demo version or not a demo version, whether we are on Switch or on Steam, and etc. To just avoid the hassle of version management. So we really had the discipline of making just one version, and it just worked perfectly. We used 700p resolution, which was actually the Switch resolution. So again, this was really a pragmatic move to make sure that it fits on a Switch, and then it fits on everything, or it fits also on mobiles that are not so powerful. There was also environmental concern behind that, which was to keep the game as small as possible. So it's currently less than 400 meg for a game that has like an average playtime of maybe 10 hours median on Steam. So we kept the textures small and stuff like that. And visually, the game is, I think, really beautiful. So that's not so much of a problem, actually. We had a little bit, some issues we found were really with management of events and inputs collection, because, and maybe that's because I'm a bad coder, that could also be, but because just we had all these additions during the production time, and we collected inputs here and there, created new events, and at some point, sometimes some players would complain that there would be like conflicts generating bugs. This is kind of the main issues we found with doing the game. Porting was just not a problem. It was a no-brainer. We used the template of Lone Wolf that was available at that time for the Switch. It just went perfectly. And we used the services of Pineapple company to port to Xbox. Pineapple is a Polish company, quite well known in the Godot universe, I think. And they've been marvelous. They've been working very efficiently, very quickly. So really, thank you, Pineapple. Playtesting. We did a lot of playtesting, really a lot of playtesting. And this is really something important, and especially to do the playtesting externally, because your friends lie. Your friends, they say they like the game, but even if they don't like, your family lies. So just external playtesting is what really works. We used a company called Indium, for example. They had this very funny thing where you have this eye tracker. So you can see the bubble there is actually the eyes of the lady playing there. So you can actually see all the UI stuff that you do wrong because they never look at this button or this thing. Just don't look there. So it just speaks the truth about your UI. That's really super useful. And also one thing we did a lot were events. If you go to an event, and you see 200 or 300 people playing your game actually in front of you, and you watch them playing, and you can go there and ask questions and say, why didn't you push that button? And that is super useful, really. And you have to do it very early to validate, to check boxes on certain things, or say, okay, we have to rework this because people don't understand it. Marketing the game. So we launched You can see there the wishlist additions are really interesting. This is like really the life of a game is like electrocardiogram. It's like, you know, going up and down all the time, and you have these bumps. So your aim in life, 5 minutes, your aim in life is to get as many bumps as possible. And for that, you need Steam events. Steam is king, Steam or queen. Steam is doing everything. If Steam decides your game is going to be put forward, then you just sell or get wish lists. If not, then you just disappear into the ocean of games that come out all the time. So Steam events are really very important. So we were very lucky to announce our page launch during Wholesome Direct, which is really about cozy games. And so you see this first bump of wishlist editions. And then we spent a year in production. You see one big bump, which is Next Fest. Next Fest is like this thing where you can put your demo. It's a one-shot cartridge. You can do it only once in a game. And that is also super helpful to get bumps. And then we announced the game. You have this huge bump of wish lists is when we actually launched the game. And again, we were lucky to get into this Wholesome Direct show, which is really targeted at this particular audience. And so a lot of people wishlisted. Our statistic for us was that each time a person buys a game, you have 5 people wishlisting it or something like that. It varies from game to game, obviously, but and so you're collecting wishlists, you're selling, you're collecting wishlists, selling, you're participating in as many Steam events as you can. You are working on promotion and sales as much as possible. We also did ads on social media. Again, you have to be pragmatic. Do you really need to do it? Do you have the money to do it? Is it worth it? You have to look at the costs of acquiring wish lists by doing ads. To give you a number, for example, we had a cost at some point of $1.5 to gain a wish list. So you have to make crazy calculations about, is it worth it? Is it too expensive? Depends on your conversion rate and things like that. So you really have to approach all these business aspects in a very narrow way. What did we learn? Maybe a few things if we had to do it again. Tutorial integration. Tutorial is a pain in the neck. So if you start doing tutorials like at the end of the production, you're dead because your tutorial is going to break everything anyway. So you have to really try to integrate and think about it from the scratch. Same thing with keyboard, mouse, and controller integration. If you want to go in consoles, you need controllers. So just thinking about the mouse and forgetting about controllers is maybe not a good idea. If you start thinking about it from the beginning, you will have less headaches and problems later. Prototyping, core loops, that's obvious. Playtesting, I told you, yeah, super important. Also to know who your players are. For a funny story, at GDC, this is where we met our first typical player. We went there for an event and we saw this lady coming with a frog hat on her head, and she was shouting, playing the game, so, so cute, so cute. And we said, this is our player. And this is fantastic. We have to talk to these people. These are the people we're doing the game, our core audience we're doing the game for. And you have to find this typical person. Yeah, 2 minutes. Okay, almost done. Yeah, marketing is the same. Know why you do things. I talked about events. Events are super important, but they are super expensive. So you want to go to Gamescom, it's going to cost you $5,000, $6,000 maybe to go there with hotels and travel costs and whatever. Do you really think you're going to sell enough games to pay for that? It's very tough, very tough. And you have a physical limit of the amount of people who come to see your booth. Maybe 200, 300 people, that's enough, not enough to pay for the costs. So you have to think about why you do it. If you do it, for example, for playtesting, then it might be worth it. But then you have to do it early with a demo before releasing the game, for example. So it's really useful. What now? We're working on next game. The next game is going to be a step up for us. We're going to do something with a little bit of 3D. We're going to have a character this time who's moving. And so, yeah, that's probably the idea also, is you learn a lot with the first game, so you step up with the next one, and you just climb the mountain slowly, slowly. Thank you. Questions? One question.
Hello. I was wondering, in terms of sales, which difference did you see between Steam and consoles? Like, was it worth it to be on consoles?
Yeah, yeah. Again, from a pragmatic point of view, if putting the game on a console is not too expensive, then you have to multiply the platforms as much as possible, because every sale counts. Every single unit you sell, you're like, at the beginning you watch the screens every day and you're like, whoa, 10 more, 100 more, 200 more. Then you do it less and less. But still, it's so important. So whatever platforms you can get out, you have to, unless of course it's too expensive and the porting is too complicated. But yeah, for us consoles, I think, well, one of the two consoles is almost at the level of Steam. So it's really, yeah, super important. Depends on your audience too, of course. Thank you. I think you have to go to lunch now.